Hello, I'm Daniela. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make hat pins and faux hat pins. Now, hat pins are made using a hat pin blank. It's a little piece of metal with a little tip that holds the beads in place. You'll need some jewelry glue and some beads of your choice. Hat pins were originally made as an accessory, a little piece of jewelry that women would pin through their hats, their hairdo, and then back onto the hat. And this would secure the hat to the head. These weren't hats like baseball caps that fit snugly on. These were elegant hats that sat perched on the head, sometimes at an angle, sometimes at the top of the head. And women wanted to preserve their hairdos underneath it. So by using this pin, the hair didn't get crushed or anything, and the hat sat lovely on the head. Hat pins aren't really used much anymore. They're more of a collector's item, but they're certainly a beautiful element. I like to use them in my fabric journals because they're just so beautiful. You could also make faux hat pins. Now these are much easier to make. I use just wire and hot glue along with the beads to make them. They're reminiscent of a hat pin. I don't think they would hold a hat securely on a head. They might, but they're really more of a visual element, not so much a functional one. So let's get started creating these beautiful objects. So here's the hat pin that we're going to make here, and then I'm going to show you some faux hat pins. We're going to make some hat pins today using hat pin blanks, and then I'll show you some faux ones. If you can't get the hat pin blanks or you don't want to because you just don't see a need for it, we'll just use some wire and a hot glue gun for the faux ones. For the actual ones, we'll use the blank, some beads, and some jewelry glue. So as you can see here, I have my hat pins, and you can tell the difference because they've got this little removable end cap on them, and that just prevents that poking part from actually poking through and hurting someone, and it secures it through the hair on the hat. My faux ones look very much like my actual hat pins. They don't have that end piece, and the end of the wire, while it still pokes and will still go through hair, might not go through a hat depending on the weight of the hat, but for our purposes of sewing it in a book or using it in a junk journal, it's perfect. And I'll show you ways you can do that. They're almost indistinguishable, really. So to create the hat pin, I have my hat pin blanks here. I'll set these aside. And there are two different lengths here. I have a 6-inch and a 5-inch length. You can use whatever length you can get, and you make this as large as you like or as intricate. So to start with, I'm going to take some beads here that I have. I have this little ceramic snowman. I need a small bead for the top of the pin, and then I like to have 1 or 2 beads at the bottom. So I'm going to make it on my 5-inch pin. I'll set aside this larger pin. First thing I do is remove the end cap. You can see at the end of the hat pin, there's a little tip here, and that prevents the smaller beads from sliding off. So right now I'm just going to design my pin. I've got my snowman, my little bead to secure it, and then I'll put one more bead on, see if I need a 4th bead. So I'll try the 4th bead. And actually I kind of like all those beads. I like the graduated sizes from the small to the main and then back down to the small. So now currently the beads move around, which is what we don't want. So I like to slide my beads to the end once I have the arrangement, and then I take some of this jewelry glue. Now it has a very fine tip with a little needle that you use when you're storing it to prevent the glue from drying out in the tip. It's a clear little glue. It only needs a little bit. I like to put it down the length of the end of the pin, and then I slide my beads into place. This bead, this snowman bead, is particularly large hold, so I can use a little more glue to secure it in place. I just put a little glue there, slide my silver bead, and finally just a little glue to secure my final pearl. Now these beads will move around while that glue is still wet. So I want to dry it upside down. So I have a little crate, and I'll just put the pin in just like that and let that dry. It doesn't take very long to dry. I'll recap my glue, getting that little point in the cover here. And now I have my hat pin with all these variations. And you can see they can be whimsical or elegant depending on the beads you're using. Now the same thing goes with the faux hat pins. I like to take 20 gauge wire and then I just cut it to whatever length I want. I typically don't measure it. I just know that it's going to be about a little more than 6 inches or so. And then I'll just straighten that out very gently. Just coax it into position. If it's too long, and this is way too long, I'll just clip it down to a more manageable length. So I have wire clippers and then these jewelry pliers. They're rounded on the ends. You can use needle nose if you don't have these. When I put my beads on, they'll slide right off. So the first thing I want to do is take my little jewelry pliers and just curl the end. I have a little curl there, then I remove the pliers, move it around, and I'm just going to create a little bit of a spiral. It's decorative, but it also holds the beads in place. And then again, I straighten that out. So I've created basically a faux hat pin already. And now I want to play around by adding my beads. So I have all my beads here. I'm not sure the pattern I'm going to use. Typically the hat pins have a little bit of beading and then a long pin, but because this is faux and I'm using it in my fabric book, I can make it as long as I want. So I know I have my focal point. I'll have a little red pin up top, maybe a red pin on the bottom. I think I'll put a pearl there and a pearl there. So I have a little bit of a pattern. I'll thread these on. Double check that I like that appearance, and I definitely do. So now you can use the jewelry glue, just like you did with the hat pin, and that will secure this in place. But if you don't have jewelry glue, there's no need to buy it. You can just use some hot glue. So I just take a little hot glue, and I'm very careful in putting it at the end. I secure my beads in place. I use my buffer bead here to hold it in place because that glue is hot. And then I'll just continue to add just a small little dollop of glue, sliding my beads down into position. The ceramic bead has a very large hole, so I can add a little more glue to hold it in place. And I'll do that all the way down until all my beads are secure in position. Now once the glue has cooled, and it doesn't take very long, I'll just remove any of the excess glue or any of the strings that remain. And so there I have the faux hat pin, and it's quite lovely. The end is pokey, but not as sharp as a hat pin. I suppose you could sharpen it if you want to make a hat pin, but I like to just use it like this. I also like to take a bead, put it on the end, and then I just use a little dollop of glue, and I just hold it in place until the glue dries. Just to protect that end. And so there's the faux hat pin. I think it came out great. I think it's beautiful, and I love to see how it looks. Now I have some variations here. Something a little more elegant, just with 3 pearls, 3 pink pearls, my Christmas colors, alternating gold and pearls, cute little penguin, and again that was a large bead, so I filled that with glue, and then a modified version of my ceramic peppermint stick. If you don't want to have the length and this extra wire exposed, you can just curl the ends. You've got just a little bead bauble here that you can use in your work as well, stitching that down into place.
So that's my technique for creating hat pins and faux hat pins. They're a great addition to mixed media work or fabric books. I just love them. Can't get enough of them, particularly at Christmas time. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Please consider becoming a paid member of my channel. Thanks for joining me today.